Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and the program is Everything Cooperative. Welcome this beautiful, beautiful Thursday morning. We're getting some rain, much-needed rain. You know, without the rain, we cannot get the crops, can't get things to grow. And what NCB grow things, they grow co-ops. And this morning, we have Mr. Chuck Snyder on the program, and he is the president of the National Cooperative Bank, NCB. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, Vernon.
How are you
doing this morning?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Oh, very good. We're celebrating 4 years of being on the radio and getting the word out about cooperatives.
And you know, Chuck, in that first year, 4 years ago, we were only going to do it for a month, and it's expanded to 4 years.
Yep, and I think we have great things planned for next year as well. So we're going to make it bigger and better and put more of the content online so even more people can hear about the progress of cooperatives around the country.
Chuck, why did you decide to support this in your energy, your enthusiasm, and some money? Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I think cooperatives are one of America's best-kept secrets. And, you know, there's a lot of advertising and talk about various different public policies and that, you know, have worked, and many have not. And co-ops are celebrating, you know, over 150 years worth of contributions and really don't get the word out to the public. For the most part, they serve their members. And there's no real need to advertise and create brand names. But there's a lot of brand names out there that are cooperatives that you just don't know about. In the farm, you talked about the rain and growing crops and ocean spray and Land O'Lakes, butter, Blue Diamond almonds, Cabot cheese are all cooperatives that are owned by the farmers. And then you have small business purchasing co-ops. These are small businesses all throughout the country that may have grocery store cooperatives up in the New York area. You have Wakefern or ShopRite, Fresh Grocer in Philadelphia. So you have all sorts of different types of purchasing types of businesses. Here in D.C., we have some very successful Ace hardware stores that are locally owned, but they belong to the ACE Cooperative so that they can compete against the Home Depots of the world, so they can aggregate all their purchases so they get better deals so they can pass it on to their communities. And so co-ops play a very important part in building community. And for example, I was recently up in New Jersey, up in the inner city, Newark, New Jersey. Okay. And there was a grocery store in the inner city, and we've heard a lot about food deserts and people not being able to buy healthy food in their communities. And ShopRite Co-op, which is owned by independent businessmen around the tri-state or really from Virginia all the way up to Connecticut. But they opened up a store in Newark, New Jersey, right in the heart of Newark. And it's really something that is part of the community. You walk in, you immediately see a mural of the community that the community actually painted. And about 15, 20 years ago, I visited another grocery store in Newark, New Jersey. It was a Pathmark store, and it was much celebrated at the time. But it really didn't serve the community. It was a dirty store. It really didn't meet the needs of the community and eventually closed. And this store is just so nice and well-stocked that they actually had some of the customers, when they first came in, actually cried that someone cared that much about them that built a world-class grocery store in their community.
You know, Chuck, you said a lot, and it started with the question of why this radio program. And I recall you and I and 150 other cooperators were at the UN in 2011.
That's right.
And then we were together in 2012 at the White House staff members talking about co-ops. And in both of those meetings, it was said over and over and over again that co-ops are the best kept secret, not only in the U.S., but around the world. Some places around the world it's known better than in the U.S., but it's the best kept secret. And so I came to you 4 years ago, like 4.5 years ago, to pitch this idea of this radio program to let people know about the benefits of co-ops. And you bought on to it, and I had an idea, and you pushed me. I thank you for that. You got the idea, you pushed it, let's do it. Like you're saying, we're going to do bigger and better things next year, and I appreciate you as a partner in that.
Well, if it was a push, it was just a little push to get the ball. Or you've run with this program, and I've had a lot of great guests on the show over the years, and congrats. And let's work together next year to make it even better.
And you mentioned the different types of co-ops, and so just really quickly, I'd like to give the definition for those of you that have not heard this before, but there are basically 4 different types of co-ops. There's a whole lot of different ones, but the first one, if it's owned and controlled by the employees, it's called a worker cooperative. So any business you can think of that have employees, it could be a co-op. And then secondly, if it's owned and controlled by the people that uses the products or services, i.e. the consumers, it's called a consumer cooperative. And the ones that we know about are credit unions. We talked about food co-ops. We talked about housing co-ops. So if it's owned and controlled by those people that uses the products or services, and Chuck, in Madison, Wisconsin, which I really like this idea, there is a health clinic that's owned and controlled by the patients.
Right.
And so it's a patient-centric health clinic. So their policies and procedures are put in place by the patients for the patients.
And one of the great things about that, because it is patient-centric, a lot of time and energy is spent on wellness instead of trying to treat the disease after the fact.
Right.
They spend a lot of time in health checks and in
preventing the
counseling
disease.
And things like that to head off those illnesses down the road. And that's so sorely missed, I think, in our healthcare system today. And if it's consumer run, people want to live healthy lives, and they want to take care of things before it gets a big problem.
Right. So the other two are, we already talked about purchasing co-ops. So groups of people get together, or groups of businesses like farmers or artists get together and form a co-op so that they can buy the products or equipment that they need to farm or to raise their cattle or whatever they're raising. And then artists are doing this now more and more, where they'll come together, musicians will come together, or artists that make jewelry or other crafts, and buy a warehouse or buy a storefront, and then everybody will bring their products together, and then they can sell it better.
Correct.
So we have these purchasing co-ops, and on the other end of it are the marketing cooperatives. And that's the ones that some of you mentioned, like Land O'Lakes or Cabot Creamery, where the farmers will bring their products that they produce to these folks, and then they will market them. And again, artists are doing that a lot too. Right. So those are 4 types. Now, the bank sort of helps fund all of those?
Absolutely, and all over the country, from inner city, from Washington, D.C., all the way up through Alaska. In fact, we actually finance some of the native tribe organizations because we feel that they're a type of cooperative. It's owned by the native tribe members. They share in the investment, and they share in the rewards. They're governed by elections by people from members of the tribe and things. And so we've been doing that for some 30 plus years. And many times we're the only lender that's willing to talk with them. And so we provide a very vital service. Right now, there's a lot of tax reform discussions on Capitol Hill. And we're spending some time educating the Congress on how this will negatively impact cooperatives. And again, what's happening is that you have people that are writing tax law that they don't really understand the cooperative model. And, I like to think that they're doing this inadvertently, but, sometimes you wonder about that.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about this tax law some more. I find that what's common, what you say in your mission statement, or rather about your employees, that what they have in common is that they all join together cooperatively to meet personal, social, and or business needs. But most co-ops or most entities like the Alaskan tribes, and they're all people come together to help solve community problems.
Absolutely.
Okay. And matter of fact, that first October, 4 years ago, a guy named Papa Sin, who was on the program, Papa Sin is from Senegal, and he said that if there's no community problem, there's no need for a co-op. Okay. That they do come together to solve community problems. And in his community, they created a housing co-op, then a transportation co-op, and then a school. That's what their community need, and they created all of those together.
Right. And needs change over a period of time. It's just like any business. There's not too many businesses selling buggy whips these days. And things. Buggy whips. Buggy whip.
Okay.
So I mean,
or buggies, or
buggies, so the cooperative model is endlessly adaptable, and if there's a need out there and people are willing to work together, they can get the economies of scale. And it's just in today's economy, you hear a lot about sharing. Ride sharing. A lot of discussion around millennials wanting to instead of own, they want to share things, which is a cooperative activity. And I think that in today's society, we tend to want to butt heads with each other, and that's not the way to get things done. Collaboration, cooperation, people getting their needs fulfilled by working together with one another is something that is as valuable today as it was 150 years ago. It's always been that way.
Well, we're going to come back and talk. We're going to take our first break, but we'll come back and talk more about people working collaboratively, working together cooperatively to get things done. But we'll be right back. If anybody wants to call in with a question or comment with Mr. Chuck Snyder, you can do so at 1-800-450-7876, and we'll be right back.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOS and 95.9 FM.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and the program is Everything Cooperative, and we have the absolute pleasure of having Mr. Chuck Snyder, the president of National Cooperative Bank, in the studio with us today. And we're talking about co-ops and how they got started. And right before we went on, we were talking about, when we took the break, we were talking about working together, how folks work together. And Chuck, in these 4 years of this show, I've come to get that it's a natural human being. In my view, we're intended to work together. This sort of view of being the Lone Ranger or John Wayne and do it all by yourself. And in both of those scenarios, they still had folks to help them. The Lone Ranger had Tonto and everybody else in the community helping him.
Right.
Or he couldn't have done it, and same thing with John Wayne. So I have it, like the Alaskan tribes, or if you go all the way back to Africa or communities in England, that people knew what it was that they were expected to do. And if everybody had to work together to do what they had to do in order for the community to work. And if anybody didn't do their job, out on the plains, the Native Americans, if everybody didn't do their job, people died.
Right. Well, in today's society, we live in a very complex, fast-changing society. And if businesses or any really organization wants to get things done today, you have to work together in teams. And the only way you can work together in teams is if you have people that are willing to cooperate, collaborate, take the ideas of others and add to them. And that's what cooperation is all about. Now, co-ops are sometimes, messy, just like democracy is a little bit messy. You're very familiar with some of the housing co-ops here in Washington, D.C., and sometimes those board meetings can go a little bit long. But, that's just people working together. Sometimes it takes a little training to work together in a boardroom, because cooperatives are businesses, and they're run like businesses. They have a board of directors. They have a mission and vision statement. They have strategies. They have revenue and expenses, and hopefully they're making money so they can reinvest in their community. So it's pretty much all these co-ops really need to not only have a commitment to fill a need, have values in doing that, but also have to be good at business to be successful and provide the services that the members really want today.
You know, you mentioned something that I find, I think it's the first reason I like co-ops is the principle number 5. There are 7 cooperative principles, and number 5 is education, training, and information. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that one has to learn in a co-op is how do you solve problems together?
Right.
There's going to be differences of opinion. If you say 2 or more are gathered, you need God also, is the book. And the reason you need God is because if you have 2 or more people together, there's going to be conflict. Right. Because you need God and or cooperative principles to learn how you solve problems when they show up. They're going to show. Right. And so figuring out, and this is what I like about co-ops, is that people learn how to work together, how to solve problems, how to make decisions together to make it work. And that takes longer. Right. Okay. Than a hierarchy with one person at the top making all the decisions. Right. It takes longer, but once that decision is made, then it's implemented better, faster.
It's more accepted by the community because they feel like they've been heard and they're made their contribution. Maybe, was changed a little bit to build upon that idea. And, I hear so many times the people that participate on cooperative boards learn so much. They take some of these skills and move someplace else within the community. Here in the district, we've had folks that have served on their cooperative board, and then they've gone on to be council members or other advisors within the community, et cetera, or learned accounting skills and started out a bookkeeping business or something like that. So it's a great way to sort of learn at the boardroom to know what minutes are all about and what budgets are all about and how to execute that, how to measure yourselves against the performance that you were expecting, and then if there's an issue, overcoming that challenge and figuring out what the solution is so that you can move forward. These are all skills that are very valuable in our life and can be learned at the cooperative board table.
You bring up a really great lesson in this cooperative business model is that learning and applying that knowledge is so much a part of the co-op principles, co-op business. And it helps the individual at the individual level, at the family level, at the community level. And all through these 4 years, Ruthie Wilder comes to mind. She's in Baltimore. She's the president of a 80-some unit housing co-op. Mm-hmm. And she is retired now, but she worked in their metro system as a train driver, like a metro driver. So she's a blue-collar worker, everyday worker, but she's learned leadership skills. Mm-hmm. She has learned budgeting. She talked about it right here on the program. Mm-hmm. Okay, and she took those lessons that she learned and applied them to her life. Right. Okay. And the other thing that I've had people to talk about is once you learn in a co-op, how does that co-op function and how you get on the board of directors and make decisions. And once you get those leadership skills, then you go out and you say, okay, in community, I need to be on the board of directors, board of education. Right. I need to be on the city council. Right. Okay. I need to be the mayor. So you get all of these different cooperators who learn these skills to go out and do other things. So that is absolutely amazing. And in Jessica Gordon Nimhar's book, Collective Courage, and some other things that David Thompson has done in writing about the civil rights movement and cooperatives, it was clear that Rosa Parks went to get training from people that did cooperative training. Mm-hmm. And she learned her civil rights, and that's why she was set down on the bus. Right. She got her rights. And so I have it that the civil rights movement would not have happened or would not have happened the way it did without cooperatives. And that isn't well known. Yeah.
Well, I think that they definitely made a contribution to the civil rights movement. You talk about the fifth principle of education, training, and information. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things about co-ops is that it gets people together and they share information. Yep. It creates synergies that you wouldn't have expected. For example, here in Washington, D.C., there's something that was recently formed about 3 years ago called the Community Purchasing Alliance. And it's an alliance of churches, and they've added charter schools on recently. And they had an interfaith council that brought some of the churches together from time to time. Mm-hmm. But, someone had the idea to, as some of these discussions, to form a cooperative to save on the purchases. It seems like everyone today is getting a little bit squeezed as far as the expenses, and they found that they were paying too much for just simple things like trash hauling, and everyone
they were getting ripped off. It seems
their trash taken away.
Yeah,
and but they figured out that if they came together as 50 strong or 80 strong, they could get a better deal.
Yeah, and
so they did that with electricity, and now there's actually some solar panel work that's being done of these various different community churches, but. Getting back to this informational and education, now that they're coming together and talking about how they could save money, it creates other conversations mm-hmm. about how they can work together. Nothing to do with the purchasing, but other topics with religion and how communities are talking with each other and how they can work together more closely. And you see that all the time in co-ops. Co-ops help to create community by sharing information that you wouldn't have had as a result of, the co-op brings that stuff together, and that sharing of information helps to build community, and it's just not, for the day, but for hopefully for many years to come as a co-op continues to do its business.
I've been to a couple of their meetings, particular annual meetings, and as being a property manager, and most housing co-ops are nonprofits, so they reach out to nonprofits, so I've had, matter of fact, I bought my copy machine through them.
Oh, is that right?
It's a great experience. I've got a couple properties that are looking at solar panels. Mm-hmm. Some have looked at, what's interesting with the things like trash hauling, by having a property manager, we end up negotiating for all of our properties. So our contract was what they were getting, what CPA was getting. Mm-hmm. So we didn't get savings. But churches were paying twice as much on average. Mm-hmm. So they got major savings. And what I also like at these meetings was, when people are sitting around talking, all of these churches talking, now they have more money to put toward whatever their mission is.
Absolutely.
Okay, helping the poor, the least of these, or right. whatever they're doing. If they have a school, now they have more money for their school and less money for their vendors, which is neat.
Right.
And they sit around and talk about their missions. Okay.
Right.
And how they can benefit with their mission.
And so they can grow their mission.
Yeah.
And help more people.
Yeah.
One of the things that the bank recently did was they helped fund a toolkit so that other communities, other faith-based communities around the country could use this toolkit if they're interested in form a purchasing alliance in their community. And there's been some interest. I know that the churches up in Baltimore have an interest in forming a purchasing alliance, and there was a group up in Pennsylvania. But there's no reason why pretty much every community in the United States should, especially faith-based organizations, being able to work together, not only to save money, but to communicate better with each other.
Okay, I like this idea. I mean, if we could go national or international to get people both talking together, but also get people to save money. I love it. Yep. And the bank funded that toolkit?
Yes, we did. It was $50,000, and so we're going to be putting it online, and hopefully communities that are interested. Each community will probably do it a little bit differently, but the toolkit will be a resource to show the possibilities of and the value of people coming and working together.
Miss McDonald, and we're going to go to our second break, with the Cabot Creamery, said that the folks at NCB are angels, and this is one example. So, okay. We'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOS and 95.9 FM.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. The program is Everything Cooperative, and we have in the studio with us Mr. Chuck Snyder, who's the president of the National Cooperative Bank. And NCB's mission is to support and be an advocate for America's cooperatives and their members. especially in low-income communities, by providing innovative financial and related services. And one of the innovations we just talked about was providing monies as for toolkits so people throughout the U.S. can start up their own purchasing alliance for charter schools or churches or other nonprofits. And there's a lot of different innovative financial and related services that NCB delivers. Chuck, my question has always been, and you've answered it to me sometimes, I think this is the third time you've been on the program in these 4 years, but how does a bank work in low-income communities? Because I took banking in school, and most bankers, they only look to loan money to people who already have money, already have assets, so that if they fail, then they can go reach out and get these assets to pay for the loan, because banks are only interested in three things.
Right.
Getting their money back, getting their money back, and getting their money back. So how do you
It is a
do
challenge,
this?
but we all remember the Great Recession of 7, 8, 10 years ago, and banks really struggled. And our loan portfolio to low-income communities did very well. It did better than our loan portunities to non-low-income.
That's hard to believe, Chuck. So how did that happen?
Well, first of all, I think that the people that we've lent to in low-income communities want to repay us, and a lot of times, if you lend money to a developer or someone that's speculating and renting out, they bought a house on the speculation that it's going to go up in value, and they're going to rent it out in the meantime. That's an investment activity, and if trouble comes, they'll try to get rid of the property or default on it. But if you lend to someone that really needs a home in the inner city at a price that they couldn't normally get in the marketplace, they'll fight tooth and nail to repay, because that's it's so much more meaningful. And you talk about innovation. We just yesterday we approved a new program. It's with the Urban Housing Assistance Board, better known as UHAB, up in New York City. They're a developer of
That's Andy Riker?
Andy Riker is the head of UHAB. And it is a loan program for members of limited equity housing co-ops, and to be able to buy a share. Now, most limited equity housing co-ops are structured so that the buy-in is very reasonable, and for the most part, these shares go for around $20,000. That's the good side. The bad side is that it's not going to appreciate like a normal house. There's usually some formulaic which allows them some appreciation. But in a place like New York City, where affordable housing is so tough to get, there's long-term residency because they do have they're homeowners, and we created a program with UHAB to make those $20,000 loans. There's not too many banks in the United States who will make a housing loan for $20,000, to be quite honest, because all the significant paperwork. But UHAB's going to originate these loans, and then we're going to service these loans and finance the purchasing. There's some credit enhancement by some foundations and things, but it's going to provide a lot of liquidity for people buying and selling affordable housing co-op share loans up in New York. And one of the things that we're hoping is that once we get that program up and running, we can move that to other cities. But that's the type of thinking that is required. It takes a long time to put some of these programs together, but the value is just so significant. And you brought up the issue as far as banks can't make loans. We can do it in a way that's creditworthy, but it does take a while, and it's not that efficient. So you have to be patient. And we're a co-op. We're owned by the housing co-op. So, they elect the board of directors, and we meet 4 times a year, and they look me straight in the eye, and they say, what are you doing to help us out? And I better have some pretty good answers. So it's a commitment, a long-term commitment that's laser-like a focus in on our membership. And, we can't do everything that maybe our members would like, but we have shown that dedication to this area, we can achieve a lot. In fact, most financial institutions would only have maybe 3, 4, 5% of their loan portfolio in low-income communities, and we have 10 times that amount. We have about 35% of our portfolio is in low-income communities, and that's outstanding.
It is. And, I want to go all the way back to, you mentioned that in the Great Recession that the low-income communities did not fail. And I have it that one reason is this education piece.
Right.
And in this education piece, that housing co-ops particularly make, and co-ops also make long-term decisions, not necessarily short-term decisions that happens. In my MBA program, the criteria for making an investment was the return on investment for the investor. Right. What's the return on investment? So sometimes that would cause a short-term decision that may not be good for the business long-term.
Right.
But co-ops are more involved, more interested in what's the best decision for our members. And so a lot of times that's a longer-term decision. So they would not make these short-term loans that have changing interest rates or big balloons. You all wouldn't let them do it either. Your co-op.
No, I think the co-op board doesn't allow those things.
Yeah.
And so they determine what they think is prudent, and they provide guidance to their members so that their members don't get overextended. And I think there was a lot of safeguards that were in place that didn't allow for a lot of the speculation that was caused in other markets and had defaults. And it's not to say that the housing cooperatives didn't have their challenges. They had some challenges, but they didn't default on their loan.
Yeah,
they didn't
work together to solve the challenges.
Their home. They may have struggled here and there, but for the most part, they did much, much better. One of the interesting things is that we did a study some 20 years ago, and it showed the operating costs of a housing co-op versus sort of a low-income rental. Mm-hmm. There's a significant difference, and it's cheaper. And it's the home ownership, it's caring, making long-term decisions. A lot of a recent study that I just read showed that one of the reasons why public housing is so expensive in the United States is turnover. It's if you're repainting the unit every other year and doing a lot of fix-up expenses and things like that, it's expensive.
Very.
It's expensive to rent out the unit all the time. Well, from your experience, I know that you see that residents tend to stay in the housing co-op much longer, and therefore it's cheaper. And then that savings is passed along, and so instead of paying $1,500 a month for a 2 or 3 bedroom, they're paying $600 or $800 a month. I mean, that's it's a really good deal. And not only that, they know their neighbor and they know their community.
Chuck, you bring up that 20-year ago project, that research, and you funded another one that looked at all of the HUD-funded housing co-ops compared to the HUD-funded apartments.
Right.
And the HUD-funded co-ops outperformed the HUD-funded apartments in every variable.
Right.
Rents were lower because people took better care of. The board of directors made better decisions long-term so that the property after 30, 40, 50 years was in much better shape than the apartment down the road.
Right.
Okay. And in Atlanta, the second project, Wildwoods, I think was the name of the cooperative, they were paying $500 a month for a 2-bedroom, and down the street for an apartment, it was $800 a month.
Right.
Okay. Every variable, the housing co-op outperformed. So my question became, why then does HUD not put more money in? They were putting very little money in housing co-ops, only in seniors,
right? Not
in just everyday co-ops, and they put all of their money in apartment buildings. I have a theory. Okay. But you have any sense of why the U.S. government doesn't put
it's
better?
It's one of it's an FHA program that's actually paid for itself.
And
it's a mystery to me. I wish our public policy folks would understand this a little bit more and be more supportive. But one of the things, besides all the economics and building of the community, one of the things that I liked most about the study was it showed that residents of housing co-ops vote more in the public elections.
Oh, yeah.
Than
absolutely. They're more engaged.
Yeah, they're more engaged. It's their community. They have ownership, and if you're renting it, they're like, well, it's not really mine, and so you have less of a vested interest in your community.
Now, I've sat I cannot tell you the number of housing co-op board meetings with my business in property management, but it's amazing. Sometimes they take long time, sometimes they don't, but it's how people will hold each other accountable.
Right.
In the co-op. If you're not paying your bill, they come at you. If you're not taking care of your property, they come after you. And then they work with the police.
Right.
They work with the city council. They learn how to do all of this, which makes this so much better. And even if there was a Section 8 in a housing co-op, the government would pay less because the rents are less.
Yeah, yeah.
Or co-op fee, maintenance fee, whatever you want to call it. But
I had a story along several years ago. I was visiting a housing co-op here in the district, and I was talking with their president, and she was telling me all about the housing co-op community, and there was a bunch of kids that were hanging out in front of the housing co-op, and she went out and said, "Hey, move down the block. And you're causing a little too much trouble." And, I sort of mentioned, boy, you were pretty tough on those kids. She says, no. She says, you see that door? That door is my door, and they're not going to be causing trouble in front of mine. And that's ownership.
It's ownership.
And I'm sure that, it was the community that she wanted and not the community that she was forced to live in.
Yeah. They clean it up. They go out and clean up in front of their community.
Yeah, they want the trash. They wanted, like everyone wants. They want a clean, safe, clean community to live in. And when you have that ownership, things like that happen.
But that's one of the things in that HUD study was they were safer.
Yes.
They were safer because that same woman would go say in the board meetings, I hear them say, well, I know that's Joanne's son out there who bringing these cars in here, or Judy's boyfriend is selling the drugs.
Right.
So they knew who was doing it, and they talked to the police and said, you got to get that away from here.
Yeah.
We're not having it here.
Yeah.
So, ownership.
Yeah.
It doesn't just automatically happen going from a renter mentality to an owner mentality, but when it happens, you get great results.
Well, that's one of the things that we can talk about after the break, I guess. But
okay, we'll talk about it after the break. But we're talking about housing co-ops, but you get the same kind of thing in any type of co-op, where people really take ownership.
Well, that's where that fifth cooperative principle, education, you really need to educate the board of directors as to their power and their authority and limitations as well.
We'll be right back, everybody. Please don't touch that dial.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.
Information is power, and this is Vernon Oaks with Everything Cooperative. That's why the WOL is a great partner, because NCB has given us and supported us with monies and to give you information about cooperatives. If you get this information and use it, either find a cooperative to go do business with or start a cooperative to solve your community problems, then that's where the power is in the information. And Mr. Chuck Snyder is here with me today, the president of National Cooperative Bank, giving information about why co-ops work. Now, cooperative values are self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, solidarity. And in the traditions of the founders, cooperative members believe in the ethical values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for one another. And Chuck, I really wish we could get these values on Capitol Hill. Okay. Okay. In the White House and in
absolutely. It seems like we're a little short on that these years. And one of the things that we're proud about a lot of things we do at the bank, but for the last 4 years, we've been recognized by the Washington Post as being one of the best employers. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I thought of that is I think the main reason is our values and fairness. And not only do we try to do what's right for our member, our customer, but we use that same value system with our employees,
right?
And try to provide them a workplace that they feel is fair, equitable, pay, have career paths, et cetera, diverse. And it's good business. Co-ops are good business. But the reason why I think it's good business, and we live in a environment where, people will change jobs very frequently. And, we serve our same cooperative members year in and year out. And we feel that it's a strategic advantage for us in competing with other financial institutions to have long-term employees that build up long-term knowledge and relationships with those members, which then we can hopefully serve them better. And in some of the other larger financial institutions, you basically, I know many people don't go in the branches these days, but if you do, you'll see a lot of turnover in that branch network. And so we view that values as the way we do business all throughout the organization.
I'm going to go back to something you talked about earlier. And I got to tell you, if I wasn't 70 and looking for a job, I'd be knocking on your door at NCB because of your values. Okay. And I've asked you this before, but do you like where you work? Do you like what you do?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know much about co-ops before I joined the bank, but let me tell you my story about how I became involved in co-ops. Credit unions are cooperatives.
Right.
They are in business to serve their members, and the members elect the board of directors. And I was president of a temporary federal credit union. This is a long time ago. This is back in the late 70s, and I was asked to run this credit union. It was for workers of temporary workers, and if you work for a temporary help company, it's pretty difficult to get a job because you fill out a job application, you're temporary and not permanent. There's a good likelihood that you'll get turned down for the loan. And so I was asked to shut it down, but after working there a couple of months, I said, we can make a go of this. And the very first loan that I made got me hooked. And it was a single mom that came into the credit union and said, hey, I need a loan desperately. We're living with some family members, but we're having some issues, and they want me to move out. I don't have any place to move. I need money for a deposit.
Security deposit. Okay.
Security deposit. It was $250 that she needed a loan for. And so I thought, okay. And I called up her counselor, and I said, is this a good person? She said, yep. And I said, well, dependable? Yep. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give this person a $250 loan, but make sure she's employed for the next 6 months so that she can repay us. And so I did that. And I was a little bit naive at the time. I didn't know the impact that this loan was going to have on this person. But it seemed like every week this person came in and deposited another $5 into her account, made her loan payment. She was saving. She thanked me profusely and said, I needed help, and the credit union was there to help me. And I'm thinking, gosh, this is a simple business transaction, and if I can make that big of impact on someone's life by making this loan, count me in.
Count me in.
So that's how I got involved in co-ops, was through that loan at the credit union. And, I've been trying to do things like that ever since. And, it's do well to do good. Any organization has to perform well financially, to pay their people well, to provide fringe benefits, et cetera, and run like a business. And you have to make tough decisions sometimes. But then use your values and see how you can really have maximum impact and value for the people that you're trying to serve in balance with those profits. Obviously, you can't spend so much that you become unprofitable. But if you do it right, you can do well to do good. And, we've been doing that for many years. In fact, next year in 2018, we're going to be rolling out a national depository program. It seems like no one goes into the bank branches anymore. And we're going to be marketing over the internet to sell checking accounts and CDs and things like that. And what we want to do is attract people that are interested in investing in NCB to help us do more of the things that we like to do of helping people. And so we're going to start this program. We spent the last 9-12 months upgrading our digital platform. And so we're just about ready to get this thing rolled out. And we think that, and we get people calling us up all the time. Gee, can we open up an account at NCB? We like the things that you do, and we would like to support an organization like yours because you invest in things that we care about.
That is absolutely wonderful. Now, who decides what happens to those profits? You got to be profitable. I don't care if you're a nonprofit or for-profit. You got to make money to survive.
Well, that's why we have board meetings, and the members elect the membership, and we have various different committees, and we create budgets, and we talk about these things all the time. And it has to be a balance. You have to make money and be profitable. You have to invest in your community, just like we invested in our systems recently. You have to put money away to do those things. But then again, you want to make sure that you're investing in the communities that you're trying to serve. And if you do it right, like I said, the loan portfolio in low-income communities performed very well during the Great Recession. And that made money. And then there were some other portfolios that we had that actually didn't do as well. Mm-hmm. And so you can do these things prudently, but you have to do it cautiously and use sort of old-fashioned banking concepts and be conservative, but also be committed and willing to listen and also be there over a long period of time. You just can't come into a community and then leave. You have to be there for the long term.
Well, I've had several co-ops come in and say, well, first off, the members decide what happens to the money, its profits, maybe through the board or maybe through the membership, but they put 1/3 in dividends back to members, 1/3 in social responsibility kinds of things back to the community.
Right.
And it could be to help other co-ops to get formed and grow, and then 1/3 for growth.
Right. I've heard a lot of different formulas, and each co-op is different,
right? And
depending what they want to achieve, and that's fine, because
the
cooperative model is endlessly adaptable, and you do what the members want.
We only have a minute or so left. What do you want to say? How do you want to leave people today?
Well, we just celebrated a co-op month,
October,
and I just feel that today co-ops play a very important role in our society, and I encourage everyone to learn more about the various different types of co-ops. Be willing to volunteer your time, whether it's a credit union or your housing co-op or the Community Purchasing Alliance of faith-based organizations, or help a worker co-op get started. There's owners of various different businesses that feel committed to their employees and have actually helped their employees buy the business through a worker co-op or through an ESOP. And so I encourage everyone just to sort of learn more about the cooperative model and how much it has contributed, not only here in the United States, but abroad. We didn't talk about the international contributions of co-ops, but it's very, very significant all throughout the world.
Everybody out there, thank you, Chuck, for coming in. Thank you for listening. Please have a cooperative week, and we will see you next Thursday.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL, 95.9 FM.